And tonight, less than 1 week into the military campaign against Gaddafi's regime, the so-called international coalition appears to be crumbling. Now, according to ABC News, Norway and Italy are considering suspending their participation in the Libyan operations. And what is even more startling is Germany has announced it is pulling its forces from NATO over its opposition in the no-fly zone. And here with the latest on this growing crisis is former UN Ambassador John Bolton. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being with us.
Glad to be here.
What do you make of the split in NATO and what I was asking Karl Rove moments ago, this so-called steering committee? Because the United States, the president announcing that, we're not taking a leadership role, a steering committee deciding where troops might be used in a war? Help me out here.
Well, I don't think I can help you out. I think this is a classic example of the failure of the Obama administration to understand what its goals are or to how to get there. This all should have been worked out within NATO well before military operations began. I think it speaks to the haphazard way in which the president made his decision, the lack of a clear objective, and the lack of agreement among our basic allies as to what we're supposed to achieve. So I'm very worried that unless the display of military power we've seen so far pushes Gaddafi out of the country, that we could be in for a long, long slog here.
Yeah, if we go back to December 2007, then candidate Obama was asked by the Boston Globe the following question. Would the president have constitutional authority to bomb Iran without seeking the use of force authorization from Congress? Now, his answer, Ambassador, was very simple. He said the president does not have the authority under the Constitution to unilaterally authorize a military attack in a situation that does not involve stopping an actual or imminent threat to the nation. So what happened? Now we're going to respond militarily, haphazardly even, because of a humanitarian need? He says we have a responsibility to respond. What do you make?
Well, the Constitution doesn't bar incompetence, which is what we have here. He was wrong on his constitutional analysis back then. Maybe he's grown in office a little bit. But the fact is the objective we should be pursuing in Libya is ousting Gaddafi. There is a clear national interest there to protect against Gaddafi going back to his nuclear weapons program and again resorting to international terrorism. Even the humanitarian objective the president has set out, protecting Libyan civilians, depends on Gaddafi being removed, and yet he's not willing to allow our military to accomplish the one legitimate objective we have.
His obsession seems to be, how quickly can we get out? How can I limit the U.S. involvement in all of this? The one thing, if, Ambassador, if we're going to use military force, it seems to me, and his stated goal repeatedly is that we've got to remove Gaddafi, isn't the one thing that's missing from this equation is victory? It seems to me that, and I think Britt Hume made a similar point, failure seems to be an option in this case.
Well, the president's too smart and too sophisticated and too nuanced to believe in victory. He believes in something else. Look, he and his people have been told for years that American leadership irritates the rest of the world, and therefore he's trying to hide the reality of this operation, which was we have led it from the beginning and we have delivered most of the military muscle. The result of his unwillingness to assert American leadership is exactly the disarray you now see in NATO and even among the potential Arab partners for the coalition. So I think this is proof positive that the whole line of analysis that says American leadership somehow irritates the world just needs to be discarded, and sooner rather than later.
Isn't that the point? I think you've really hit the nail on the head here, is that he doesn't believe that America's role ought to be the leadership role, that maybe somehow we don't have the moral authority to be leading. How else do you explain him telegraphing that we're not going to send boots on the ground, that we really have no intention of enforcing our threat, that Gaddafi is going to be removed?
Well, that was a big mistake, whatever our ultimate intention in terms of ground forces. But I do think there's a lingering problem here that could get worse, and that is his willingness to allow Americans to be put under foreign command. Really, not since World War I, America's first entry onto the European stage, have we been under the ultimate command of foreigners. We've had interwoven commands in other battles, but he has very casually said foreigners are going to command this in the next few days. I think that's something Congress ought to debate. I don't think there's a constitutional issue here, but I think there's a real issue of national security in putting our young men and women under foreign command.
Would you advise against it? In other words, I personally think if he's going to do that, then we ought not have a role at all. Am I right?
Well, I still think we need to get rid of Gaddafi. We cannot allow him to remain in power now, and I think the easiest way to do that would be to reassert American leadership. We can do this.
Well, if he reasserts it, fine, but if we're going to have a steering committee, a political steering committee led by France, I don't think that quite cuts it.
No, that's a prescription for a long-term involvement with no clear winner or loser. It allows a return to terrorism and nuclear weapons by Gaddafi and the risk that the opposition will, in fact, be taken over by al-Qaeda.
All right. Thanks for being with us, Ambassador. We appreciate it. And coming up, the legendary cable host, his first appearance on Hannity. Larry King is here tonight. We'll talk to him about the passing of his dear friend, icon from Hollywood, Elizabeth Taylor. And still to come tonight, Donald Trump battles it out with the ladies on The View over Obama's birth certificate. We'll show you the exchange.
I want him to show his birth certificate. I want him to show his birth certificate.
Team Obama is on the hunt for a new FBI director. Robert Mueller's 10-year term is coming to an end in September, and in an administration with a history of vetting problems, it may not be surprising that one of the candidates reportedly being considered is raising eyebrows. Now, she is former Deputy Attorney General Jamie Gorelick, who helped institute the infamous Wall of Separation. Now, that's the group of policies enacted in 1995 that prevented crucial information sharing between intelligence and law enforcement before 9/11. In fact, during his testimony before the 9/11 Commission, former Attorney General John Ashcroft actually argued that, quote, the single greatest structural cause for September 11th was the wall that segregated criminal investigators and intelligence agents. If that's not enough to make you believe that Gorelick should be America's top cop, her other qualifications to lead the FBI is that she was once a top executive at Fannie Mae. Now, during her time there, the company paid her $26 million. And here with reaction is the author of the New York Times #1 bestseller, Culture of Corruption. Michelle Malkin is back with us. Michelle, welcome back. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
All right, her? Tell me, you know, with their history of vetting problems and their picking of extreme people, the person that set up this very wall that created a vulnerability is going to be the top cop in the country?
Well, in many ways, it makes perfect sense that an architect of failure, a Beltway fixture and crony, would be in the running and on the short list of an Obama administration slot. Yeah, it makes perfect sense because failure is the middle name of this administration. There is an old saying in the Beltway bureaucracy. It's this: screw up, move up. And when it comes to getting ahead after overseeing so many failures, Jamie Gorelick really wins a gold medal in that regard. And specifically with regard to her tenure in the Clinton administration as a Deputy Attorney General under Janet Reno's Department of Justice, what we had was somebody who was more interested in turf protection, covering backsides, and protecting political interests over American interests. That's what the Wall memo is all about, and it's very instructive as they consider her on the short list. For every Republican currently in office and in Washington and in a position of authority and responsibility to reread that entire memo, it's their words. They're the ones that use the words walled up, wall between counter-terrorism officials and those who were investigating on the criminal side. And just as John Ashcroft pointed out and the 9/11 Commission shed light on, it was this particular structure that did so much damage and hampered efforts to go after the likes of everyone from Mohammed Atta to Ramzi Yousef.
Well, let me go to the other side of this, too, which is if we look at the foundation of the economic slowdown and problems with the banks, financial institutions, we go right to the heart of Fannie and Freddie. And in spite of warnings by Republicans as we're coming, everything at Fannie and Freddie was fine. Franklin Raines is doing great. Jamie's doing great. She got $26 million. Others got close to $100 million. They got wealthy, and the country went broke, and we had to bail out the banks, the financial institutions. She got $26 million. Never been held responsible for her role in this. And now she, add this to, her list of incompetence. She's going to be the FBI director?
Yeah, that's right. And just to set the context, the period under which she was a vice chair at Fannie Mae was between 1997 and 2003. Not only was this the period where the subprime meltdown was being engineered, but this was also the period when everything was spilling out of every crevice about the Enron-style, surpassing Enron-style accounting scandals that were going on right underneath their noses. And it does bear repeating that she raked in this $26 million, the self-aggrandizement in the way that so many of these Clinton cronies helped themselves at the taxpayer trough at a time when this financial disaster was allowed to happen, was engineered and enabled by these people who were benefiting from it.
All right. On a personal note, if I may, Michelle, I know and I feel very bad for you and your family. You have a missing cousin, and there is a search attempt out there. You've been a great friend of this program, and we wanted to help spread the word a little bit. I know you set up a special website to help find your cousin. You want to tell us about it?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. It's been very heart-wrenching for my family for the last 18 days. I have a cousin. She's 18 years old. Her name is Marizella Perez. She's a freshman at the University of Washington, and she has not been seen since Saturday, March 5th in the afternoon in the University District in Seattle. We have a website set up. We've got a volunteer army out there who's been helping us online and on the ground, trying to spread the word to find her, and we've been relentless, up all night for the last 18 days trying to find her. The website is findmarizella.com, and you'll find the missing persons flyer there, all the information about her, pictures, a donation page to help out the family. It's been an incredibly trying time for everyone, and it's a whole different ballgame when you're on the other side of these kind of stories. And I've used my website, Facebook, Twitter, the internet, have so many people praying out there trying to find her, and I want to thank you, Sean, for giving me a couple of minutes here to try and spread the word. I appreciate it very much.
You and her and your family are in our thoughts and prayers. And thanks very much, as always. Thank you, Michelle, for being with us.
Thanks, Sean.
And coming up next, his first time on Hannity, Larry King on the death of Hollywood legend Elizabeth Taylor. And Donald Trump mixed it up with the ladies of The View, and things got heated.
They make these birthers into the worst idiots. Why doesn't he show his birth certificate?